I work for, this is who I am. I do a who am I, but even though people seem to know who I am anyway. Not that it's like whoever, but I'm sometimes infamous more than famous. But this is my wife and my kids. My wife is more famous than I am inside of Emerson. She's way more powerful than I am inside Emerson. So I'm just second fiddle. I'm the Jamie whisperer. So normally when I was growing up, I was always Tina's little brother or Amy's bigger brother. Now I'm Jamie's husband. So whenever anybody goes, oh, that's yeah. So I never owned my own name. Those are also my two girls here. So if you need to get a hold of me, real hard to find out my name on various media things. Just a few caveats. I normally don't throw this in here, but I might as well. While I speak for Emerson, I said I'm here for Emerson. Emerson's a fairly large company, so I don't speak of all of Emerson. In fact, there's probably going to be a number of people who are inside my little part of Emerson who are going to yell at me for things I say. They tend to. And these are my ideas and experience. I'm going to be biased. Unfortunately, where I play is in the power generation market. But I know especially here in SANS, for years it was like, this is too much power generation and NERC SIP. It's all about power generation. What about me? Even inside of our own company, we are power and water. Even our water group is like, you guys care about power more than us, and we're really important. And yeah, we do, but we have to talk about where it's easier to talk about to get everybody to that same conversation. So everybody seems to understand the 900-pound gorilla in the room. So we talk about NERC SIP a lot. Now we're changing those narratives. Inside of Emerson, our bigger brother organization, Delta V, out of Austin, I'll even go here. Last bullet before we move on to that. It's going to be a learning process. Whatever I say today most likely will change tomorrow. And my bias will change as it goes, as more information comes along. If you don't know who we are, this is the only slide that is anywhere Emerson slide. The rest is all cat pictures because it's what I do. We're out of Pittsburgh. That's where our Power and Water Solutions group is out of. That's where we do most of our engineering and most of our development is in Pittsburgh. Emerson Corporate is out of St. Louis. Delta V is out of Austin, Texas. So we're pretty heavily North America focused. That's not a great thing because each world region has their own little strongholds. But we are in Pittsburgh, which is really great if you want to come see our corporate environment in the middle of winter. Everybody seems to love that. So, hey, come on down. We'll show you in February what it's like. Not that we're the coldest, but it's not fun. We're actually above freezing today, so it's pretty cool. We are number one in China, I think, right now, which is really kind of being the bigger market that's kind of been amazing, is that also we are, when you talk about the AP 1000 Westinghouse, we were Westinghouse 25 years ago. I came in right about at the end-ish of Westinghouse days. AP 1000 is Ovation hardware and software under the covers. So I don't know if should I just be happy or apologize? I'm not sure which way I should go with that one. But they take our hardware and software and then sprinkle a little Westinghouse magic on top of it. All right, so when we're talking about supply chain, this is boring. Unfortunately, with how things have gone with talking about supply chain security, is we have the supply chain people working on supply chain security. And it's become a bit of a issue. Traditionally, when we talk about supply chain, is when I'm working with trying to make sure that we are a global company and we have the supply chain actually taken care of. It's normally down to cost, making sure you have all the components there for quality is taken care of, make sure if there's ever an interruption with getting a particular CPU or a screw or type of cabinet, it's a lot of machination about making sure nothing interrupts the actual installation or the purchasing of something. A lot of it's just in time. If you guys don't know just in time, I am not a supply chain expert. I'll tell you that right now. My pedigree was old Nobel and Notes Administration, so me being into this stuff, But anyway, a lot of it's just in time, so we can't hold inventory. So we have to make sure when we order something, we have to make sure it all comes together. We had a supply chain issue a number of years ago where floods in certain parts of Asia Pacific because of monsoon season caused problems with our PCB boards that were being manufactured because they were underwater at that point. So how do we handle the supply chain of that? And natural disasters like floods, that is where you have to worry about how do I make sure the interruption of making product A go to product B to person C is how the supply chain is functions. But when we're talking about security of supply chain, it's a little different for how you guys, when we really want to handle this. Generally, your questions are the major who, what, whens, and wheres, and hows kind of situation. You know, what's in it? I want a hardware bill of materials kind of idea or a software bill of materials. Tell me exactly what's down inside of it. Who is that? It's connecting into me. Why are they connecting to me? Should they even be there? Where is it? We're getting in situations where, again, we're a global company. We have to deal with people who have assets in not only different parts of the U.S., we've got to take our U.S. brain and shelve it for a few minutes and think it evens out outside there. Europe is afraid of where their stuff is going to be. Different parts of Europe. China is afraid of where their stuff is going to be and are requiring stuff to stay within China. Russia, the Middle East, they all have their various areas of influence, and they're all approaching the same threat. And it's even a supply chain threat for Europe, because now they're saying all of our stuff we're building right now is based out of the U.S. It's ARPANET, it's the Ciscos, the Microsofts, the Dells. That's all U.S.-based companies. What if they decide they don't like us no more and we have no more technology? It's a real challenge. So their attitude is, we're going to all do it ourselves. And ultimately, how do I verify and who is accountable? That's where this comes down to the real rub. And if you talk to anybody when they start bringing up supply chain security, it is not about making sure you're doing what you need to do. Generally, it's, okay, if something fails, something happens, who do I get to fire? Who do I get to sue? And that is where we see a lot of the legal mumbo-jumbo coming around, is that we're building in certain kinds of, I'm seeing certain kind of patterns throughout the world, all approaching the same ideas, who ultimately is accountable. And generally, when we say, well, I'm a supplier or I'm a vendor, technically, vendors are not vendors. I'm also sitting in that unique position of being a buyer from somebody and a vendor to people. So I'm buying from Dell or I'm buying from Microsoft, and then I'm vendoring out to you. And also what I have to do internally with my own company is talk to people that this is not just a product thing that I'm handing you a PLC or I'm handing you a piece of software that does historian or anything like that. It is actually an issue that it's Emerson, the company, how not only is development of it, but also how our IT assets are handled, how we respond to a breach, where our data is stored. So communicating that up and out to the various parts of Emerson has been a slow re-education challenge at that point. And we're getting that one, you say, I want a one person to call in case there's a problem at security at Emerson. Same thing with GE. I want to, just like I'm from the government, I want to call that one person at the government who's going to take care of everything. That's okay, good luck with finding that one dude or dudette at this point. So I'm going to talk through a few of the security issues, and I apologize. Joe did a way better job on a lot of these items, so I'm going to try to stay higher level than that. Generally, I end up going down in the weeds. I apologize. When we talk about different types of issues to the supply chain, talking about normally watering hole issues. And if you don't know what a watering hole is, it is having a certain kind of resource or a person or a place that generally was supposed to be safe, trusted, and is not. Granddaddy of them all, what started this whole thing with NERC-CIP, was the Havex, Dragonfly, Energetic Bear, Koala team, BYOB team. Generally, I will not go into too much of this one. What I will talk about on this one, supply chain-wise, is that they found that they compromised the websites of a PLC vendor or two, and they went up there, changed the actual binary that was there on the website, changed the hash values that were there beside when you downloaded the PLC programming tool. Then you could actually still verify, bringing it down, says, yeah, this is the right tool, because they compromised the website. So if I own your website and own the actual place it's downloaded, I can probably edit the website too. It's HTML. So having a trusted website and saying, well, I put the hash values up there, doesn't really help you in this particular case. Russian intrusions recently, we'll call them Russian because that's what the United States government says. We'll go with that. That the primary methodology that we're talking about there was a resume. I sent you in, hey, this is an engineer. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this person. Can you take a review this resume? Tell me if this person seems legitimate to you. That was generally the email going around for the early fish. So I've gotten those emails. I'm sure you've gotten something similar. That would be an easy way in. And it's coming from somebody you know. They harvested email addresses, old school stuff. This one was fun recently happened, which was the CoinHive JavaScript mining. This was a compromise of the Browse Aloud plugin. If you were a website developer, you could use this plugin that would make your websites more accessible to people who can't see or hear very well. So it converts your stuff into spoken word and describe your funny cat pictures to people who come to your website. They compromised the actual plugin vendor, not vendor, loose term, but it was a plugin creator, and that was being used across a large portion of the US government to help do this kind of functionality. And so Air 2, you could easily nail them from there without just something dumb like making sure your website looks nice on a browser. So, okay, fine. I don't really connect any of my computers in the control industry to the internet. I don't really need to have them download anything. It's no big deal. We're fine. We're air-gapped, right? So we do have some trusted remote connections in here. A lot of people do this. Good. Again, the granddaddy of the issues of trusted remote connections is the NotPetya, internal Petya, Nyetya. I love that one. That was one of my favorites. Where the ME docked, what happened was that once they got into certain parts of Ukraine, they then bounced to other places through VPN tunnels. So I already had established connections to other companies who got compromised, and then everything went literally sideways at that point, instead of a north-south, east-west kind of situation. The target, that one was a compromise of the HVAC company, actually out of Pennsylvania. Woo, yeah? No, don't get excited about that. All right. Anyway, they were an HVAC monitoring company. They were compromised by somebody phishing, found out that they got in there, started going after the point-of-sale systems instead of Target. The fun part on those, if you watch some of the historical information on what happened, is they had all the fancy widgets and what do's that were telling them that they were compromised, but they didn't have them all turned on. So again, you buy a lot of this stuff, you need to actually use it and have somebody monitoring it. We already talked about it to death at this point, but the idea again is that once they got in, they fished, they used credentials they harvested people's actual users and credentials and logged in that way. And then they had a lot of dwell time. So it wasn't like suddenly day one hacked, stole credentials, day two, everything went sideways. This was long, months and months and months of reuse that could have been patterned, but maybe not. If you do low and slow, they won't know the difference. So, okay, fine. I really don't let anybody connect in. I don't let any vendors connect in. I don't have any internet access. No big deal, right? One of the primary ways that we looked at one of the primary things you hear from people when they talk about fixing problems is just patch. But what if those ways of patching has been compromised? This one is an old school one. Whether or not Flame came right after Flame, or Duku, I believe, but DUQU, they came right after the S words compromise. I won't say it because you owe everybody a shot every time you say the word. That's a rule, right, Joe? He's not even here to say that anything about it. So, yeah, okay, see, right? He owes how many shots now? That's like 600 maybe or so. All right, hold him to that night at Topgolf. What happened was that they had a Microsoft, they signed their malware with Microsoft cert. Either it was stolen or collided. Colliding means you take a bunch of values and hashes and it gets the same kind of value come back out. So you really do a lot of computational thing to make sure it looks like your file looks like the file that you need to do it. Or it was given, we don't know. But the idea was it looked like a Microsoft update at that point. This one was, you may not know about the NetSerang, but it was a common, lack of better, SolarWinds kind of idea, or it's a administration kind of tool used in the Middle East, not Middle East, but Southeast Asia. And they compromised the actual location where that was being updated, pushed out a malicious update down to the admin tool, took over people's machines. This one's one of my favorites, and I'm going to add in an extra one I don't even have on the slide. LockState. They have a connected deadbolt, and they accidentally flashed the firmware on the deadbolt with the wrong type of firmware for that hardware. So literally, when you got the update, there was no way for you to unlock your doors. The only way to fix the deadbolt was to take the deadbolt out of the actual door and ship it to them because they had to flash it over serial. So there's no way for it to boot. So, you getting automatic updates pushed out, like one gentleman a number of conferences ago he wanted to know about just-in-time patching. He wanted to say that immediately as a patch hit, he wanted within hours, it pushed out to all his control assets. I think about situations like this where there's a whole lot of oops out there. One just recently, again, as I said, I was going to do a bonus one, was I don't know if you heard about the Bluetooth connected shoes. The Marty McFly shoes, they had them recently. So they have shoes that you can actually adjust the amount of Velcro and how tight they get around your feet. They had a bad firmware update for those too, so you couldn't tie your shoes anymore. And they were having issues where their shoe wouldn't reboot. The shoe would not reboot. The shoe would not reboot because the firmware on the shoe could no longer work because that's how they did updates and the changes of those on the Bluetooth. My dad joke, I went nuts on that one. I mean, they should have to take your shoe off and reboot it, that kind of stuff. I could put it back on. Did that work? No. So, even if we're pushing out updates, there's a lot of issues at this point where we can do a lot of oopsing while doing a lot of attempted good. And what I tell a lot of people when they sit down with technology or sit down with a product, I tell people, listen, there's a lot more misuse than malicious use going on out there. There's a lot more Carol from accounting trying to install Angry Birds on their machines so they can do something in the middle of the night, play games, versus the Russians stealing your internets at that point. So how are some of the solutions that people are currently approaching it? Contract negotiations is the number one happy thing for everybody to do. What we're going to do right now is we're going to demand our vendors to be secure, and that we're going to have secure things from our vendors. I will say right now, in front of God in public, that you asking for things makes us do things. All right, even though it may not be great, it may be enough people keep asking, they spend effort on making it happen. The right people ask, things happen. It's the tinfoil hat guys inside the organization that normally don't get listened to because, again, we're security people and we think about all the different ways we could take a paper clip and poke your eye out with it because some of us actually do that on a regular basis. But the thing is I have to ask for you is to be realistic with it, with your asks. Don't ask me to be NERC-SIP when you're in the Middle East. It's very difficult to move you all the way to North America before we start. and then make you comply to North American regulations. Don't ask me for that this product will be compliant to all known regulations and security benchmarks from now into eternity. I've actually had that. From now on and in the future, it will always be compliant to all of it. I had one just literally last week the product will be compliant to all known laws, local, state, federal, and governmental throughout the world. Okay, you should really stop and think about, one final one before I go. It was almost 8 days to the hour that I had somebody ask in their contract to make sure we did not have Chinese grain-sized chips on our motherboards, and to prove that we didn't. I don't mind asking for this stuff, and I understand where it's coming from, and also I understand when you want to do this, the lawyers take the stuff and want to make it as general as possible, because if you narrow it down to what you actually care about, I can skirt around the outside of it. And then now you have no contractual hammer to hit us upside the head, right? That's the idea. Also, I don't want to have to renegotiate contracts. This is what I hear back. I don't have to renegotiate my contract with you every single time we do a different job. But the problem was when I guarantee you to be free from all forms of malware, anomalous, and from now until the machines ever shut off in 30 or 40 years, that you should be really afraid of the people who say, sure, immediately and sign off and hand it to you. Not saying that you want to have a fight with me, but it should be a conversation. There should be a give and take. And my rule of thumb, which take it or leave it, is if your organization can't comply to the thing you're asking me to do, then you might want to look at what we're asking to do. And also, I wish I had the person's information that said it, but I somewhat agree with it, is that if you are trying to fix your security issues in the courtroom, you've already lost at that point. So it's great after the fact, but it doesn't, and it helps us with figuring out what you're asking for, but we should already be doing that. We should already be going out there, listening to you and having a conversation with you and giving you things that you asked for before you start putting it into contracts. So what about standards and certifications? If everything was a standard and cert, what we need to do is get one cert to rule them all. And the idea is generally, like when people came to me and said, do you comply to NERC CIP, or how do you handle NERC CIP? I said we don't, because we're North America and we have to comply to 150 different versions of what NERC CIP should be. And if you probably talk to a few of my customers sitting out there right now, they'll probably be nodding their heads at that point, which is the idea that we try to help you figure out your plan. We try, even maybe we'll give you some suggestions of what your plan is, but generally it's going to be your plan. And we're going to try to go to spec, but we'll do our best. And fixing it, which is unfortunately how a lot of governmental organizations, sorry, as mentioned earlier this day, is that governmental organizations, Germany's version of common criteria is not the same as Korea's version of common criteria, which is not the same version of a different cert level of China's way of doing it. And us trying to do business worldwide is getting rather cumbersome. So a lot of people are just pulling themselves completely out. If you saw Hewlett-Packard just did that, they pulled themselves completely out of the Russian market for reasons, but it might have been partially, it's just nearly insane to prove like in China and Russia, they're trying to make you prove that you don't have backdoors from the NSA. So that's why they didn't want to do code reviews, not to make 0 days. They're trying to prove that they're not backdoored before they buy your software from it. They have the same fears. And that goes into the national security at this point. If I only buy from US-based people, it's probably good. The problem is that as we go more closed border, you're going to lose a lot of the benefit of open architecture. I'll throw in one quickie on this one. which I thought was kind of funny, is years and years and years and years ago, one of the things you used to get hit over the head is you need to use open source software more, and so that we can code review all this. And people who put in OpenSSL into their products were heralded as champions of security, and then Heartbleed happened, and then got beat over the head with a chair because now I just made you vulnerable in your PLC. Same thing that happening right now is in the supply chain security NERC-CIP world, is that they're worried about open source software giving people access to the source code so that they can, people can make 0 days now. So they want more closed source and guarded code to make sure it's not filled, nobody can go there and review it, or make edits to it from another part of the world to add in things, because this is open source, right? It's funny to watch the pendulum swing back and forth. But what we're going to end up with nationalistic security is little pockets of allowable product. And then what will happen is, in about 5 or 10 years or 15 years, everybody will go, this is too hard. What we need is one company that does it all for all the world and compete in an open market. It'll happen. Mark my words on that one. Just telling your users no. Don't use cloud. Don't use blockchain. Don't use whatever. It's stupid. Stop it. Don't touch it there. That hurts. They're on the same supply chain security kind of stuff is one gentleman who was I don't know if he's here, and I apologize if I'm using you as an example, but who was on, I didn't see him face to face, so I don't know if he's here. But I'm sitting on the WebExes that were very laborious. And he said that he doesn't allow his company to run anything in their systems without him first reviewing the source code. And if you just can't review the source code, then don't use it in your system. And I was yelling at the muted phone, hopefully muted phone on my desk, and saying, has anybody done a source code review of the Cisco WebEx that we're currently on? Or PowerPoint that you're giving me with the slides? When's the last time you did that to make sure there's no backdoors? It's really comfortable to tell you no, because I know what I know, and I say no to what you want to do, and I do it as a dad every day. And I give you no and why, because I said so, shut up. But generally, we're a bunch of cyber janitors cleaning up after our users at this point. A lot of it is just making sure that you don't hurt yourself when you start running around with sharp objects. And you're only going to do only so much. So it's really up to us, being the adults in the room, understanding what the problem is, to make us more safe for them. They're going to hurt themselves whether you want them to or not. They're going to do stupid things. Would you rather know they're doing the stupid thing or want them to do it on their own and open up you to more risk that you didn't know about? Just saying. So at this point, what can I do? You're telling me all the things I can't do, or it doesn't work. I'm left with nothing, right? Well, when we're talking about negotiations and the having kinds of check sheets and questionnaires, I'm going to, also I didn't say it on that slide, you hand me a questionnaire with a whole bunch of questions, you better actually read the answers. Don't give me a question that says, explain to me how your system meets all known regulations. Yes, no. That's the spreadsheet part, is just yes or no. You're going to get bad answers. And you're also going to get answers you're going to know that people are going to lie to you anyway when they're handing you those forms back. So what you need to do is start talking to me about my compliance results, or what kind of certifications I actually complied to. Maybe I'll say ISO 27001, or we use this kind of testing. Am I going to hand you the tests? Probably not. We'll have to get to the point where we can start showing you the dirty laundry without you getting really upset about the stinkiness of it. Because again, we're all companies here, we're all trying to do our best with what we have. As for our own security policies, you may not get a report, you may get a stupid white paper or one-sheet data sheet says we do security gooder than everybody else. But if you start asking for these kinds of things, these are the things I'm telling internally at my Emerson area, is that they're going to start asking for these things, you need to be ready. And I figure it takes me about 3 to 4 years of saying that every time I see somebody before they actually said it. And then what's going to happen is they're going to walk in and say, they're asking for the money. And I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to ask for that. So we're going to have to figure out together what that kind of looks like and what is an acceptable amount of information without giving you just letting you walk in and read all of our IT asset information. Hashing, again, I made fun of it a little bit, but it does sort of help. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to be upset with you. If I give you hashes, you better use them. For crying out loud, I am tired of putting out CDs of Solaris patches and then people go, you patch Solaris? Yeah, every month we do. Why aren't you? Solaris doesn't need patching. Right. Digital signing doesn't make sense for everything. It does do some weirdness. If you tell somebody, I just want everything signed, that tells me right now that you maybe didn't think about what you really wanted and what you're going to do. If you do want everything signed, you better have a process in place to actually check all your signing, because otherwise you're just making me do work and you're still just hoping for the best. Encrypted remote connections, I think I even said the next one is definitely with two-factor. If you're talking about with our people who do remote monitoring, or here, I'll throw in a few one for you guys. You can do it on the bingo card at this point. Digital transformation, Industry 4.0, let's see. We'll go with those two. So if we're going to do all that stuff, which we're basically just coming in and we're taking a look at what you have data-wise and massaging it and handing you back really cool-looking spreadsheets, ask them to actually have some two-factor. And if you don't have two-factor, or if you say, well, you use two-factor, well, we're probably going to say back to you, and I have said that to the companies, is, well, what two-factor you want me to use? What's your system allowing me to do? And then if I get a blank answer back, or like just stares, then I go, okay, well, all right, well, what do you want me to get you a company that does two-factor authentication? What do you want to plan on doing? How are you going to verify I'm the right person who's handling that kind of stuff? Oh, and a side note on that one is Duo just got bought by Cisco. So if your vendors all use Cisco, they technically now could maybe use Duo. I'd give them about 6 months or a year before they can start talking about that while Duo is being acquired into the company. But that may really help out a lot of us, getting two-factor, usable two-factor into our environments. Segment, please, segment. Do something with that, please. Also monitor, maybe you should monitor. Did I mention any monitoring? If you're not watching your walled gardens, if you're not watching your little sand pit that you have going on there, then there's all kinds of cat turds everywhere. So you really need to step back and realize, we're talking, when we talk to these kinds of companies with wanting 10, 20, like in the case of nuclear, they want 50 years of lifespan, which is challenging. Make your products better is great. And even if I came out with the most secure devices and software today, I still have stuff for decades that will never ever get touched. And you gotta start with knowing where your stuff is and start watching it a little bit before you can start worrying about is we all hacked up and stuffs. And then partner with your vendor. I say that out loud, but it generally is a long-term partnership. It's going to be a marriage. You're going to hate me and you're going to love me. You're going to be disgusted by me, but then, you know what, you don't want to go back out and date. Generally, right now, it's not much better out there. I'm the devil you know at this point. That's how I kept my wife as long as I have. She's too far in to go and train a new guy at this point, so she's going to stick with me as long as possible. So you need to know, that's one of the reasons why I started coming to these conferences a long time ago. It's easy to hate on a nameless GE or Schneider or whatever, or Emerson, that matter. It's a little harder to hate Dave. I mean, you can hate Dave. A lot of people do hate Dave, but at least you know you hate that guy, and you know have a relationship with me. But ultimately, the idea is that we're not going to fix this. And whether or not you believe in vaccinations or how they handle, there's going to be people out there who cannot or will not ever update or fix themselves, and it's all going to be outward facing for reasons. Maybe they can't. Maybe they're in the nuclear industry and they just cannot get off of XP. It's just the way it is. Sorry, we're stuck there for the next 30 years. We need to lift up our game collectively at this point to build more of a herd mentality, because again, I thought about using instead on this slide the it takes a village, but maybe I'll get something thrown in my head. But it really is a matter of getting everybody to do a little bit of something, each part of their piece of the pie, and ultimately we should get easier to secure some of this stuff, because at the end of the day, no one ever has figured it all out. It's watched over the decades of doing security and this kind of work in general. I've watched it going from just being openly in the code red days of things, SQL Server just sitting out on the internet and being spun up and nailed constantly, to now we're talking about evasions around whitelisting. We should be high-fiving ourselves right now that we've gotten to the point where they have to do stupid party tricks to get around our EDR products. That means they had to, which it really is. To me, it's like we're sort of winning. That's great. We just need enough people doing enough work, and then the vendor side, we can't just immediately say we have cool vendor number 12 as our security partner, talk to them, and that's how we address all the problems. We have to pull up our game to make the betterment of the product that we're handing you better. So like if you want to take an example, is like look at Windows at 2000, Windows XP 2000, 2001, and look at Windows today. And think about, I'm pointing out something that far back, and there are systems out there running the power and water right now who are older. If you look at Microsoft XP and how they've been on SP2, and they had forced firewalls and different types of patch management. They came up with Patch Tuesday around that same time period. There are still systems out there who are older, and while we make things better today with the products we do today, it'll be hopefully still sitting out there, and in 15 or 20 years be laughable in security. Then I'll hopefully still be around, I guess, at that point too, to say I'm sorry then too. So that's generally it. Any questions on this stuff or anything you want to yell at me about? I'll try to answer Delta V sort of, or Rosemont, Fisher, Pentair now, I guess. But I'm Ovation, I'm Dave, and thank you for my TED Talk.